If you have a question and you want to pop it over in the chat, you can do that. And while Nicole is speaking, I'll keep an eye on the chat. My name is Johanna Myers. I am the Director of Christian or Disciple Formation at Aldersgate United Methodist Church in Greenville, South Carolina. But I am also the Associate Director for Messy Church USA. So it is my pleasure to welcome all of y'all to this webinar. This is something I get doing monthly, at least for now. We're excited about the opportunities to kind of offer these short-term training, short-term kind of 1 hour, 1.5 hour kind of webinars. The next one that we have coming up in September on the 23rd, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, somewhere in between there if you're Central or Mountain Time. Is that webinar is going to be led by Marty Drake and Layla Wagner. They're out in Community United Methodist Church. Is it Methodist Church?
Yeah,
Marty?
Community Huntington.
Okay, there we go. They're going to be talking about planning a Messy Church session from start to finish. So for those of you particularly who are new to Messy Church, this might be a great webinar for you and for your team to sign up for. That is not up on our website, so y'all are getting the kind of inside scoop right now, but mark the date for the 23rd. Let you know when that registration goes live. We'll have another one in October, and we'll talk about doing a sheep trail, just something that's mentioned in the Messy Nativity book. And some of us have been doing that for a few years. We'll walk through what's involved with doing a sheep trail. So these are the upcoming webinars. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn this over to Nicole. I'm going to let Nicole introduce herself, but I will say, when this is over, not during the webinar, but after it's over, make sure you check out her really fun Bible Dogs Facebook and Instagram. I've always wanted to hear a dog read scripture, and Nicole's dogs read scripture. So you definitely want to check that out.
Right.
So thanks, Nicole, for being here with us today.
My pleasure. So hi, everyone. Start with my first slide, just a little bit about me. So I'm Nicole Reilley. I'm the lead and teaching pastor at Valencia United Methodist Church, and that's in Southern California. If you're an amusement park person, I am right next door to Magic Mountain. That's what our town is known for, that roller coaster area. I manage the Bible Dogs, which is an Instagram and Facebook account for with these two dogs who read Bible verses to kind of encourage people. I'm a Messy Church board member, and I helped start 65 Messy churches. In my previous work, I was the director of new ministries for our annual conference here in Southern California. So kind of one of the starting people that got excited about Messy Church, at least on the West Coast. So I'm glad to be with you today and to talk a little bit about what I'm calling messy patience. So I know with each of the things that we're looking at, we're talking about messy something. And so today we're going to talk about messy patience. And the idea for doing this really came from Roberta had heard me talk about this. And so as we start out, let's start with a prayer. So let's take a deep breath and be in this moment, be present. God, we're grateful for a time together. We're grateful to reflect and to learn together and to think about how you're involved in our lives and in our ministries in this time. Help us to be guided by your Holy Spirit and to rest in your love. All of this we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. So as we talk about kind of the spirituality of patience today, I want to say, think about your week so far. Did you find yourself needing some patience maybe? Maybe it was with your kids. Maybe it was with the government. Maybe it was with someone in your family or your spouse, or maybe You just needed some patience with yourself, right? I historically have not really liked to think about or talk about patience for the simple reason that every time I work on it, I find God gives me more things to practice on, right? It's kind of like when people say, don't pray for patience because then you'll get an opportunity to sit in traffic for 3 hours. And so you don't want to pray for patience. But I think we all need patience, especially as we're reimagining church, messy church, the world, all these things. And so as I think about patience, for me, there's lots of ways you can define it, but I like this definition. Patience is a calm assurance based on the certain knowledge that God is in control. Patience is basically in the midst of challenges, we wait in expectation. We wait with perseverance. And so, as we think about patience in our lives, let's think about ourselves and think about yourself where you're at with patience today. So, how patient are you? Just give yourself a little internal score. 1, you're not patient at all. 10, you're very patient. And I always say, stay away from 5 because everyone likes to just give themselves right in the middle, right? So just think about yourself. Think about where you're at with your patience as we talk about this today and as we think about it. I think when we talk about patience in general and how that connects to spirituality, especially in our culture, I think we think about patience mostly as waiting. Where we're waiting and we have a sense of what we're waiting for. So like with our kids, we tell our kids to be patient for, now summer's past now, so be patient for Christmas, or be patient for dessert, or be patient for your turn. For adults, I think, we think about being patient for vacation, or being patient so others have their say, or being patient for whatever, we wait for. And certainly in the time we're at right now with COVID, there's been lots of opportunities for us to be patient. And if you're watching the news at all, or if you're just in the midst of it yourself, you are seeing that we're not very good at being patient. Whether it's you may live in an area of the country like I do, where numbers continue to rise. People are having trouble with staying at home. They're having trouble with not socializing with people. We just, as a general population, are not very good at being patient, at doing the things we need to do. And I think some people would say maybe that's because we are selfish. I'm not sure it's that. I think it's sometimes hard to know why we struggle to be patient. I think sometimes we've just had enough. One of the challenges, I think, in this time in being patient is that we are really keeping one foot in this idea that things are going to go back to normal. So we're patient, waiting for what will come, that hopefully things will go back to how they were. We'll run our messy churches in the same way. Church will gather in the same way. We'll get to do all these things. But I am wondering if patience isn't something totally different. And I am wondering if we have an opportunity in this time to think of patience in a very different and maybe a new way. And some of my thinking about this came from this book that I read called Broken Places, Outer Spaces. And the author, who's pictured on the screen, she tells the story of her life. And she was an athletic person. She was a college athlete, but she was dealing with scoliosis. And scoliosis was making it difficult for her to do all the things she wanted to do. And so in her family, her siblings had also had scoliosis and had the surgery to correct it. And so she was going to have that surgery too. And that surgery, which is very common, has just a very slight chance of long-term paralysis. And in her case, something did go wrong. And she found when she woke up from her surgery that she was paralyzed. And the book is a reflection on her experience, on what happened to her as a young person to have this life change, and kind of what it led her to. Now, she did learn to walk eventually, and she did regain a lot of her mobility. But what she experienced was a creative new door opened in her life that was totally unexpected to her. So she was living her life in a certain direction, having a certain trajectory. This big thing happened to her. And what it opened for her was this whole new door in her life that became really a new direction for her. And if you're familiar with her at all, it would be because she is now a very famous science fiction writer. So she's written a lot of science fiction books. And that was not on her mind at all. But when she became wheelchair bound, she started, her life went in a new direction. Now, now she's doing well. She's able to walk around. When she looks back on her life, would she have wanted the surgery to go awry so she could have this experience? Of course not. Nobody wants difficult things to happen. She lost her way. She lost her identity. But in the midst of that, something new was born in her. And so as I reflected on her story, and as I thought about what we're all dealing with our messy churches, our churches, and COVID, I wondered if patience is something a little different than what we often think. I wonder, what if patience is the practice of learning to make space for something new to happen? So patience isn't about just waiting, this kind of passive waiting. What if patience is the practice of preparing ourselves, learning to make space in our own hearts and in our own minds for something brand new to happen? Now, this is a very different way of thinking about patience, I think, because mostly when we talk about patience, we're pretty sure what we know is coming, right? So if we're told to be patient for Christmas, we know what Christmas looks like. If we're told to be patient for a vacation, we have a sense of what that is gonna look like. My son and his fiance are getting married. They have a sense of what a wedding would be like. But what we're talking about here is being patient, not so we would return to what used to be, but to be patient so that our lives are about opening up for what is next, even if we know nothing about it. So I think this is really my key learning from her book and from our current context, thinking about it from a faith perspective. That patience is about opening up our lives for what will come next, what God is doing, even if right now we know nothing about it. So I think the spirituality of patience becomes not just something we practice as we wait. It's kind of a stance we take for life so that something new could be born in us, something new might come to us, something new might be found. And that patience is about opening our heart and being ready for this future that God is doing. The world right now, as we know, is a strange new world. And most of us, as we find ourselves in the middle, aren't always trusting or hopeful of what we're experiencing. It can feel, depending on what you're dealing with, that the ground that we stand on is shaking. and we don't know where to find our stability. And so what people of faith have to offer is we have Jesus to offer. So Jesus is the vine. He is the one we are connected to. And so when we talk about a spirituality of patience, we're really talking about trusting in something bigger than ourselves and making space so that something new might be born in us. So patience isn't passive. I'm just being patient for things to go back to normal. Instead, patience is this practice of creating space within us so that the new thing that God is birthing in this time in faith might come through us. Now, this is, of course, hard work. It calls us to be people who connect daily to God. It calls us to be people who do what we need to do to grow in our trust in God. To trust that something new is being birthed in this time, even if we don't see it. So this is a season for patience, I think, in Messy Church. It's a season for patience in our lives, in our world, in our churches. And I think we're called to look toward Jesus, not to the past, but to what God is doing in this time. And that takes from us, I think, a lot of strength. And so where do we find that strength? Where do we find that ability to really open our lives to God so God can do these new things and we might be patient in the midst of this? Back to the book, there was one of the stories she told in the book that really affected me because she talked about once she learned to walk again, she was able to learn to drive, but she found that her brain and her legs were not connecting to one another when she drove at night. So in the daytime, she was able to see her legs and her brain was able to, through her eyes, connect to her legs and the connections were made. But at night, when she could not see her legs, her brain had trouble telling her legs how to press the brake and the gas. And she actually almost was in an accident because she could not get her legs to work when it was dark. So, she's ingenious. She's a college student, a young adult at the time. And she decides the way to deal with this is to buy a flashlight and turn it on so that it shines on her legs. So that when she drives at night, her brain and her eyes are able to connect to her legs. And that connection is made so she can drive safely. So as I was thinking about this, I was thinking about the dark time we live in. We live in a time when, there's lots going on. Some people aren't doing what needs to be done to keep others safe. Lots of people are angry. Some people are worried about their bills. Some people are dealing with homeschooling with their kids and all that goes with that. People are dealing with mental health issues during this time. And so I think we need that light. We need a light that reminds us that we can do this and that we can connect to one another and we can connect to God. So God is that light for us. And God, I think, meets us today and invites us in the midst of whatever's going on for us to lean into him. And in this time of uncertainty, as this time that things are still unfolding, in this time when it's dark and unclear, God calls us to be developing that space in our lives for patience for all that yet will be, and know that God is depending on us. We talk about depending on God a lot. God depends on us to be open and to be trusting and to turn to him and to turn to him as our guide and light. So I want to give you a couple of things that are kind of actions, things you might try out in order to step into this idea about patience and growing this space in your life for what God can do. And the first is that you might try slowing down and being curious. Asking yourself, where is God calling in this time? Where is it that I should be spending my energy in this time? What should I be doing? And maybe more importantly, what should I leave behind in this time? What don't I need to do anymore? So slowing down and be curious as things continue to unfold, as your messy church and your local church, your own personal life. Slowing down and being curious, asking good questions. And then second, up your prayer game. I am a great believer in praying at all times. And so I have some simple prayers, things like, show me the new thing you're doing and light my way in this dark time, and help me to make space in me to trust you. And so how I do these prayers is I actually, on my phone, where you have your clock and you have your alarms through the day. So like at 10:30, I have an alarm that goes off that says, be grateful for 3 things. At 1 o'clock, alarm goes off that says, show me the new thing that you are doing. And then at 2 o'clock, I have an alarm that says, make space in me to trust you. So you can take any alarm, set up any alarm on your phone to not just say alarm. It can say whatever you like. And this is a way that I've upped my prayer game so that throughout the day, as I'm trying to grow this space in my heart to be more patient, that I'm able to remember by offering these prayers. And then the third one is lower your expectations. A lot of us are very driven. We want to get a lot done. We want to move a lot forward. I'm a great goal setter. I had a whole list of goals this year as I started off. And some of my goals were just not realistic based on what's going on. This year is going to be different. And something new is being born among us in this time. A new way of life, it might last, might not, we don't know. We will all be living into this imperfectly. And so I think as we lower our expectations and practice some, kindness and gentleness, and that when people are freaking out, things aren't going how they thought the year was going to go, just to be able to offer them, it's a crazy year, 2020, crazy year. So those are 3 things that I just want to encourage you to think about. Let me just close by saying this, that I think the Spirit gives us the ability to bear the fruit of patience in our life and to replace the negativity and the fear that we often see all around us, and to replace that with trust and with hope and with love. So may we, as we think about our own spiritual life and as we think about our own need to be people of patience, waiting for the new thing God is doing, to know that God is in charge, and that because of that, we can develop this space within so that we bear the fruit of patience. So if I can help you in any way, this is my email address at the church. And then this is my church. Our logo is not a cross and flame. We have this little logo that's here for good. And I think that's a way to connect with people in our community. So that's our website. So let me just stop my screen share and see what questions, thoughts, feedback you all have as we talk about our spiritual life and spirituality of patience.
Okay, feel free to, if you want to use the chat again, you can do that. There's a little button where you can raise your hand. You can use that as well. And just feel free to unmute yourself. And Nicole, I think I'm actually going to start with the questions. Can you go through those 3 alarms that you have set on your phone?
Yeah.
Trying to make notes of the,
So the first one is be grateful for 3 things. So that rings at 10:30 every day, and I pause, and when I see that alarm, and it's a silent alarm, but you could set it as a chime or whatever. I just pause and I'm grateful for 3 things. At 1 o'clock, it says, show me the new thing that you are doing. So that's about, building that space within for what is the new thing God is doing. And then at 2 o'clock, my alarm says, make space in me to trust you.
Thank you. Yeah. I couldn't get all the words down fast enough.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Other questions?
This is Roberta. I'm not showing my face because I'm just got out of surgery a week ago. So, but I was wondering, Nicole, when you talk about lowering expectations, that's always hard for some of us who are overachievers. Yeah. And so I'm wondering if you have ideas of how we can help each other during this time to, lower our expectations, but also trusting that God's doing the new thing. I mean, it's sort of like, as we lower our expectations, we open ourselves more up to what God is doing. So do you have any ideas of how we can support one another during this time? Because sometimes I think we look at what other people are doing, especially with Messy Church. Oh, they're doing this, it's going great, and my Messy Church went crappy. So, how can we help help one another in that?
Well, I think that the key piece is that we're honest with each other, right? I think a lot of times when we think like we're the only one, like I'm the only one whose Messy Church is going crappy, or I'm the only one who's struggling with mental health in this time. So I think one of the things is it really takes the willingness to be honest with each other. And so we each have to kind of figure out who are the people in our lives that we can be honest with and be willing to say what's going on, and to know that the person, it will be a good check for us. One of the practices that I do that helps me a lot when I get in that kind of darker space of life is a thought download. I write down all the things that my brain is thinking, and they're awful things, like you're stupid and you can't do this, and you see another awful choice you made. And I write down all the crap that's in my head. And then I pick one of those phrases and I look at it a little more closely. And I think, is this really true? Is this really how I want to think? Is there another way I might think that might be a little better? Still true, but a little better. So that's one of the ways I work on it personally. But I think that the number one thing that helps me deal with things not going according to plan is having a couple people that I can just be honest with. I think there's this belief, I don't know if it's because social media, that like everything's going great. And every day, I get up and run 5 miles and study my Bible for 3 hours and I don't know, whatever else, make $1 million by lunch, right? Whatever it is. And that's just not the world. It's just not the world. So I think I think lowering your expectations it might be a little Post-it. I used to have a Post-it on my mirror that said, "Super Pastor is dead." Because I just had these expectations, like I was supposed to do it all and take care of it all. I'm like, no more. Now the Post-it on my mirror says, "Have fun." Because I wanted to go like, am I having fun? Am I having fun? I should have fun. I should have more fun. So I don't know if that helps, Roberta, but that's a hard one, right?
I saw a hand raised.
Thanks.
Sorry, Roberta. I saw a hand raised. Pat, was that you? Or yeah.
Yeah, it was. I just wanted to know what her website was again. I didn't get to write it down fast enough.
Yeah, so our website is the initials UMC and then V as in Victor.org. So we're Valencia United Methodist Church. So UMC and then V for Valencia.org.
Okay, and then what was yours?
My own personal website?
I mean, did you give yours before that?
No, my email address.
Or your email, yeah.
Which is the initial N and then my last name, REILLEY at UMCV as in Valencia.org.
Okay, thank you for that.
Absolutely. And you'll find me on the Facebook.
Other questions, thoughts? Anybody else feel like ridiculously convicted about the need for working on patients? Maybe lowering expectations? Yeah. Yeah.
Totally.
Yep, I have a question that we just did a vacation Bible school by Kit that people did at home and offered some videos. And in my connections with families, just people just seem so overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. Our young families just seem so overwhelmed. And I'm just trying to think about Messy Church for the fall and how to just be so compassionate in our trying to connect with them, because I know that the parents want to do Messy Church because they want to do good things for their kids, and at the same time I just know that they are just so overwhelmed. And so I'm just trying to find, you know, I think about the Jesus way, like I'm just trying to find a way right now to not be another thing, but to be a source of support. So
yeah. And I agree. I think that that's exactly where a lot of, I see it in my church too. That's where young families are. And you don't want any of this to feel like another burden to people. But it can be a great source of refreshment and fun too, right? So I think if it's offered as fun, take it or leave it. That can help. That can help. Yeah. Thank you for that.
I'd like to know more about Messy Church in the Bag.
All right, Jocelyn, you're up.
Unmute myself. Unmute myself. What we started, I've been providing like my word for celebration. Include in the bag itself. It's just like a brown bag with handles. I've got the Messy Church logo on it. We provide the material for, say, 2 activities, like say for Saturday. The scripture I'm using is the 23rd Psalm. So within that, we got an activity. I think someone did like a dessert to go with the like hospitality portion of like cupcakes with marshmallow for sheep. We've got another one. One of the ladies that works with us, she has making like a cross, kind of with popsicle sticks with colored yarn, just kind of wrap it around, using that for like a cross to have. And also I'm going to kind of research like 2 videos to include that they can watch as a family, and also include still the same elements of Messy Church when we were meeting, to have the grace, make a video with the song. And I'm just gonna all put it on like some colorful paper, put it in the bag. And I found on Pinterest, and I don't know if it was on like one of the Messy Church boards, for bubble prayers, because it's still warm here. So this is an activity, you know, they can do at home, but I'm going to include a prayer attached to the bubble wand just to be safe. It's a bubble wand. So I'm going to attach that to the end, and that'll be in the bag. And we've had donation of just like individually wrapped snacks just to drop in the bag. So tomorrow we'll meet at the church to assemble everything, and parents can just drive through and pick up their own bag. And if we have more people than bags, we're doing just a sign-up sheet, and you can include your address, and then they can just be dropped off at your home, like on the porch, just to be safe. So this is our second month of doing it. Last month, because school was starting here in Tennessee, we did a messy church school supply drive. So that was successful. So I'm just trying to think of opportunities where we can still, they can see our faces, I can see them. And we had a few little ones to stay. They did some chalk art in the parking lot. So that was fun, socially distanced, but that's what I've included with the bag. So I kept it the same lesson, celebration, hospitality, of course, at home, and then just 2 hands-on activities.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. We've got a couple of questions. Alyssa, I think you had your hand raised, or yeah.
Yeah, I was just
thank
say,
you.
like, on the other side of it as a parent, we've gone to the library, and our library has done something similar to that, where you can just go and pick up a little bag of something. And even my teenagers have just enjoyed that. And it's not so much about what the activity is. It's more about that it's something predictable and something that they know that we're going to go do. It's at a certain time. It gives a little bit of structure to our stay-at-home life. And I as a parent, I really appreciate that. And I like almost that's more important than what we do. It's more that we do it, and that it's something that people can kind of hang their hats on and say, oh, at the first of the month, I know we're going to be able to go do this, because life is so, out of control, and just kind of, it's almost like the days run together, and to have some of those milestones and some of those things to look forward to, I think it's been really great for my kids, and I know that they've really enjoyed that.
That's great. Thank you for that. So we had a pop up in the chat about ideas or thoughts on how to share this patience message with family units. Like how do we share this with our Messy Church families? Because it seems like it's such a great thing for them to know and experience. So somebody suggested a song called Patience by Mark Burroughs. Do we have some other thoughts or ways that we might share this message? Because I think we all are seeing how exhausted our families are, in addition to just our own exhaustion as ministry leaders.
I think there's, I'm finishing up coursework, 2-year coursework to become a mindfulness meditation teacher. And one of the things that I'm seeing as I'm offering different workshops is that people are using that with their kids. So I don't know if some simple practices to help people learn to focus on their breath and relax. And because I think being patient is about being present. So some things that might help people be more present in the midst of their lives. So maybe some deep breathing, some like a body scan to help people relax and get more in touch with themselves and stop their mind from spiraling so much. I would think some of those things might be helpful with families. My son has anxiety, and so it's one of the things that we did was body scans and breathing and relaxing to help him be more present and be more less freaked out by stuff. So yeah.
I also wonder whether that the idea of lowering expectation kind of comes into play, because I feel like that's one of the things that like whatever role you're in for your church, saying and modeling this for our families and saying like, go at your own pace. Like, you've got this, you know what you can do, you know what you can't do. And if you need to take a step back, do it. join us when you can. You know, I mean, that way of kind of saying to everyone, it's okay if your engagement isn't at the same level or what it was before, or, you know, you've got to figure this out for yourself. And sometimes we have to lower our expectations, not just for ourselves, but also for our families and for our volunteers, to just kind of say, you know what, we're gonna figure out what we can and can't do with what we've got right now and move forward, and it'll be okay.
I think you're right. I think that's important. And I also think that the having fun piece, because sometimes when we talk about patience, it sounds like a drag. Oh, I have to be patient. That's a drag. You know, so you know, maybe the time isn't what we thought and it's not going to be how it was, but what's the fun here and now?
That's a great point. How do we have fun now? Make it fun. Figure out a way to have some fun, socially distant and with masks, please. Other thoughts or questions? Somebody posted the Mind Up resources for kids. That's a great resource to use. Thank you for that. Any other? All right, we've got a little bit of time, so if anybody has a quick, like, messy church question, not to open a can of worms, but if you feel like you have kind of a quick question, while you've got some other messy church folks on a call and want to ask that question, feel free. Hi, Marty. I see your hand. Hi.
Just in response to a couple people were saying, you know, their families are feeling overwhelmed and all of that. And we've experienced that as well. But we have continued to do our messy church, and we do it online on Zoom. And I think that consistency and that having that thing to that you can count on has been helpful for some of our families. Also, we do a bag thing just like you, Jocelyn, and we put everything in, but then we have decided, we started off just giving them the bag and they could kind of do it as they wanted, but it's evolved into we do it all together on Zoom. So it feels more like we're together. And then it's not another thing that families have to find time to do. They've set aside the time to do it, and we all do it together. And we've given them pretty much everything that they need. And we plan what we are doing, things to be at home, but they involve, and we've had our table hosts have come, you know, and help lead some of the activities. So anyway, that's one of the things that's worked for us, and it's sort of evolved, and we're finding that we have people that are coming regularly that didn't used to come regularly, you know. So and we have a home that has a bunch of generations in it, and so they've very much isolated themselves, and so this has been super meaningful for them because it brings them to people that, you know. So I think if you can find a way to do that, it's helpful for all of our families.
Thank you, Marty.
We do, just to answer the question, we are only doing like 2, maybe 3 activities in the bag. And they're pretty simple ones, but they are starting to get a little messier. We've noticed our families have started moving outdoors to do it. But yeah.
Good.
Nice.
Love it.
You'll be throwing paint around a community UMC the next time we talk to you. Messy Church will have gone everywhere.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Any final questions or thoughts at this point? Carolyn, yeah.
I have I do a certain amount of messy vintage, and what those people are, the elderly people in a nursing home, for instance, have to deal with a lot of isolation from families and friends. Nobody can come to visit, for instance, and so on. I was wondering if anybody has any thoughts about helping helping these people deal with their isolation a little better.
That's a great question.
Yes, it is.
Right? It is a good question. I wish we could magically solve that one, because I think you're right. Isolation, particularly amongst our eldest, is going to be an ongoing challenge for all of us, for all of our churches, including our messy churches.
Has anyone ever done an activity to, like, maybe the messy church activities, you make a card or something and then they send them to these people? Something that's always keeping in touch. And if for those who are able, maybe the older folks could even write a letter back to the one who sent something, and I'd have some interaction with people who, I know we try to come up with creative things because my mom's in that situation. So
yeah, the pen pal idea, bringing back the idea of pen pals, that's great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love it.
I love it.
We've been doing, and we found a service that transcribed sermons. And so we get the sermon transcribed each week, and then we take that manuscript and we make it large type. And then we've been mailing it out with a note each week as a way to connect. And so then when we have people who call, and so they can talk about the sermon with the person as well as other things to connect.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, that's worked well for us. I've actually been super surprised how much feedback we've gotten from the 30 or so people who we're doing that with.
Yeah, I wonder even if you could do a simple craft where you mail, and I don't know what the regulations are, just depending on where you're at, this might not be possible, but if you can get a small craft to some folks, even if it's not on Zoom where you can see face to face, but even a phone call of kind of sitting down and saying, I don't know, the challenge of technology is always always an interesting one to figure out who has what technology that they can use, for sure. Nicole, Marty wanted to know if you have members making the calls.
Yeah. So we have at this church a care team, and they meet every Monday morning at 9:30, and they look at, so we have people who, when our folks watch online, there's a connect card and people register their attendance and their prayer requests. And then at that care team meeting, we have a team of about 10 lay people, and they go through those prayer requests, and then we talk about what else we know, because they're calling all of the homebound people. And so then we just share information with each other. And then we decide what follow-up needs to happen that coming week. And it's all the laity who do all the phone calling. Yeah, I call a handful of people every week, but they're really the consistent one who calls every week and builds that relationship.
Great. Final questions, final thoughts.
We included postcards that the kids could color with a pre-addressed address of one of our seniors, and it was stamped already, so that hopefully for Vacation Bible School, the family sent it off to whoever we put on the card. So it was just nice and simple, and they just had to color it and send it.
That's great. Yeah. I hope people put them in the mailbox. That's great.
Yeah, that's great.
Right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us on this webinar. Thank you for sharing new ideas and resources. This is exciting. Thank you, Nicole, for offering this. I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but I know for me this week in particular, this was incredibly timely and exactly what I needed to hear. So whether I want to hear it or not, it's exactly what I needed to hear. So thank you very, very much for that. Remember a webinar next month, particularly for those of you who are kind of getting started with Messy Church, who are thinking about what, maybe even how to do a virtual Messy Church. Marty and Layla will be kind of walking us through that. So that's September 23rd. Registration for that will be open probably within the week. We'll start getting it up on Facebook and whatnot. If you haven't kind of joined our Messy Church Facebook leaders group, or if you're not following Messy Church USA on Facebook, give us a follow, give us a like. People are sharing some really great ideas right now, so let that be an opportunity for some resources and engagement through that social media platform. All right, thank you guys so much. You can give a little wave, say thank you to Nicole, and we just really appreciate you all being here with us today.
Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.